Hey there. You are a magician. You've always been a magician. It's just that nobody ever told you. Nobody ever told you that your attention, that your awareness, that the direction of your focus maintains specific realities.
To know that you're a magician is to know that it is the experience of the self that is always being had. And the experience of the self is one experience that all living beings are going through. You are all, but you are also you at the same time, as within, so without. So you fill all crevices of the universe, but what happens when you forget that you exist in this state? That you are the supreme in an individualized form? Well, when we forget ourselves, instead of feeling centered in our reality, we instead center our reality around replacements for a harmonic relationship with the self. We should be very centered in our reality, knowing exactly that you can only know the universe. You can only have a relationship with the universe, only as much as you can with self. And a harmonic relationship with the self can only arise from inner alchemy, the full transmutation of the dark into the light that occurs through self-realization. Another way to say it is, the more one dives into the experience of the self, the more one becomes centered in their reality, and thus the greater spells we feel that we as magicians will cast.
We've been living in the energy extraction matrix, and in this system, we have been convinced that we are not inherently magical, that we do not carry inherent manifestation abilities, and that all of life and its many workings all fall under a very mundane, cold relationship to, well, the many interconnected parts of existence. You see, while the idea of oneness can seem kind of lofty, ultimately, we know everything is connected. If everything affects one another and you are in your sphere of consciousness, only able to observe your own translations of reality, then that means there is never any separation between the observer and what is being observed. There's never any separation between what is interpreted and the interpreter. And we can take this line of reasoning all the way down to there's no separation between self and other at an ultimate level.
We forgot that our energies are constantly creating without a beginning or end. We forgot that everything is a magic mirror, and that in living, in simply living, we cast spells. In being, we cast spells. And because we're energetic beings, it is the quality of our energies which determines what we receive. So the entire universe is within you and all of us. And this statement doesn't have to feel lofty. What this means is that you yourself are always experiencing what it is to be in you. And paradoxically, because you are in God, what we call God or Source or the Holy Spirit, and because that is in you, you are the ultimate and the finite.
Because you call the shots, knowing how you operate is of supreme importance. And this idea of know thyself is the basis of all religions and all spiritual traditions. And yet, we have externalized the divine. Saying a spell isn't signified by specifically opening up a magic book and reciting an incantation. We spell with words. Every word we speak, therefore, is a spell, and the word relates to the word sisters, who are the three fates in Greek mythology. So the word binds us to our fate, binds us to our sentence via our spelling. So, of course, what you speak makes it so. But when you are speaking, you are translating thought forms. So these spells that we speak originate as spells within the mind. And what inspires the mind to think those thoughts? Well, typically certain emotions. What inspires those emotions? Well, typically circumstances. How are circumstances inspired? From your own energetic input. So you see how everything is related without a beginning or end. Eternally swimming in a dance of cosmic musical chairs, right? No winners, no losers. You're just there, playing. Within the continual motion of consciousness manifestation, we're able to find a place in which we can actually begin new spells if we feel as if our reality has not been as tasteful. What I mean is, let's say we're not feeling great. We don't feel empowered. We simply can harness on one aspect of our vitality and really refine its contents. So you can take a look at the mind, for instance. What's the mind saying? Maybe we can start there and break a cycle of black magic right there. How can we influence the mind or quiet the mind in a different way or in a new way? Or maybe in another way, how can we break out of a pattern of speaking thoughts that end up manifesting into situations that are not for our favor? Or maybe we can hone in on the body, which may be influencing specific thought forms. As an example, if you eat too much, there's not only going to be a weight in your body, there's going to be a weight throughout your being. So sometimes the burden originates here, there, over here, outside here, but ultimately it all comes from you. It all comes from that heart space. And because that heart space is untouched, it can only siphon its own energy into a state of what we call darkness or illusion. Darkness and illusion is just the pureness of you translated in a sloppy form.
In everything you love yourself. And this goes for any feeling. And all that we haven't yet harmonized with is just all that we haven't yet come to know within us. Now, when we don't self-realize, when we don't dive into the experience of the self, then we create the illusion of an uncontrolled, unstable reality. In these instances, we feel as if we are the receivers rather than the progenitors of manifestation. This is why this principle of as within, so without, it gets more and more apparent as we expand. Basically, it is a never-ending principle once you realize that everything is a feedback loop, energy in, energy out, I see that and it sees me, because the observation needs itself to be observed. Once we realize this, then we realize that everything's always been a form of magic, or a result of magic. But most of us have this idea that magic lies only in comic books or in movies or cartoons. But manifestation is very subtle.
When a child cries, it can be humorous. It really can be. I mean, it's typical for adults to laugh after a child has gone on and on crying, Why? Because the adult recognizes the divine comedy in suffering. However, that same adult typically, their own suffering, that's not funny. But deep down, we are all children. We all have that same expansive, open, spontaneous nature deep down at the core that we typically place onto our children. And in this childlike state, our manifestation is glorious. In this childlike state, we're able to come across realities within this reality that are just as childlike as we ourselves. Why? Because input is output. But if we ignore the child within and we decide to approach existence with a hardened, burdensome mind and perspective, then our magic becomes what we call black magic. We need to be empowered. We need to be empowered because disempowerment seems to be the norm. So we should always take the norm and flip it around if we are to really excavate true divinity. Now, empowerment is nothing that can really be faked. Just like motivation and inspiration. These are things that have to arise naturally. These are things that almost have a life of their own.